If you close your eyes and imagine ancient Egypt, what do you see? Towering pyramids, golden treasures, and lavish feasts fit for pharaohs, no doubt. But what about the everyday Egyptians? The farmers, the workers, the laborers who built those monumental wonders? What were they eating? Chances are, it wasn't golden figs and roast duck. In fact, it was simpler than we might think. Meals made from humble grains, fresh vegetables, and the bounty of the Nile. Foods that not only sustained them, but told a story of resourcefulness, ingenuity, and a deep connection to the land. Today, we're diving into 25 cheap meals from ancient Egypt, dishes that might surprise you with their simplicity, yet tantalize your taste buds with flavor. These aren't the fancy meals of royalty, but rather the hearty, everyday recipes passed down through generations. The kind of meals that filled the bellies of workers, peasants, and priests alike, often cooked over open fires or in the rudimentary ovens of mud brick homes. They were born from necessity, born from what was available along the riverbanks of the Nile. In ancient times, food wasn't just about nourishment, it was about survival, tradition, and connection to the gods. The Egyptians were resourceful, using what they had in abundance: barley, emmer wheat, lentils, garlic, onions, dates, figs, chickpeas, and fish from the river. These ingredients formed the backbone of Egyptian cooking, combining to create hearty, nourishing meals that stood the test of time. Ancient Egypt wasn't just a land of deserts and pyramids. It was a land of fertile soil, rich harvests, and innovative cooking techniques. It was a place where even the humblest ingredients could come together to create something truly magical. Take barley, for instance. It was the backbone of most Egyptian meals, a versatile grain that could be turned into bread, porridge, or even dumplings. Then there's the lentil, rich in protein and easy to cook. Lentils were a go-to food for Egyptians across all social classes, particularly the laborers working on the pyramids. Often these lentils would be paired with onions, garlic, and a drizzle of olive oil or fat from animals, creating a stew that would fill the stomach and keep workers going for hours. Honey, dates, and figs weren't just sweet treats in the land of the pharaohs. They were essential to many meals, whether used to sweeten porridge, top bread, or serve as a treat after a long day in the fields. Even today, we still find these ingredients being used in Egyptian cooking, though perhaps not in the same rustic, everyday way as they were thousands of years ago. The ancient Egyptians were also quite the creative bakers. Flatbreads, baked on stones or in clay ovens, were a staple. These weren't your fluffy modern loaves, but flat, slightly chewy breads, sometimes sprinkled with herbs or drizzled with honey. They could be used to scoop up stews or served alongside cheese made from goat's milk, another everyday staple. The simplicity of these dishes tells a deeper story, a story of resilience, innovation, and the unbreakable bond between food and culture. These meals may not have been fancy, but they were rich in flavor and packed with nutrients. And in many ways, these dishes remind us that the most delicious meals don't need to be complex or expensive. They just need to be made with care and attention to the ingredients at hand. In this video, we'll walk you through 25 ancient Egyptian dishes, many of which can still be recreated today with just a few simple ingredients. They're frugal, they're flavorful, and they offer a taste of history you won't find in your average cookbook. So, grab your apron, dust off that mortar and pestle, and let's step back in time to ancient Egypt. It's time to cook the way the pharaohs didn't, with simple, everyday ingredients that have stood the test of time. Dish 1. Barley and date porridge. Imagine waking up to the soft, warm scent of barley cooking gently in a pot over an open fire. It's early morning in ancient Egypt, and the sun is just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting golden light over the Nile. The world around you is bustling with activity, as farmers and workers prepare for a long day. But before you head out into the fields or to the construction site, there's one simple, yet satisfying dish to start your day: barley and date porridge. This humble breakfast was a favorite among the common folk, especially the laborers and workers who needed something hearty and filling to get them through the long hours of physical work. Barley, a versatile grain that thrived in Egypt's fertile soil, was the backbone of many meals. It was easy to grow, plentiful, and packed with energy, perfect for fueling a busy day. The sweetness of dates, which were often dried and stored for long periods, added a comforting contrast to the nutty, earthy flavor of the barley. Dates weren't just a treat, they were a source of quick energy, often eaten by farmers and traders alike to keep them going throughout the day. Combined, the barley and dates created a simple but satisfying dish that could be eaten warm or cold, depending on the season. To make this porridge, you begin by grinding barley into a coarse flour, a task that was often done using large stone mills. The flour is then simmered in water until it softens into a creamy, hearty base. As the barley cooks, chopped dates are stirred in, their natural sugars dissolving into the porridge, infusing it with a rich sweetness. A pinch of sea salt or a dash of cinnamon, if available, adds a touch of flavor, though simplicity was key in ancient Egyptian cooking. Once the porridge has thickened to the desired consistency, it's ready to serve. In ancient Egypt, this dish might be enjoyed with a drizzle of honey or topped with crushed nuts if they were available, though these were more of a luxury. But even without the extras, barley and date porridge was a deeply nourishing, filling meal that offered both comfort and sustenance. This ancient Egyptian porridge is still a fantastic dish for us today, a simple, healthy breakfast to start the day with. Nutty, sweet, and warm, it's a perfect reminder that even in the heart of a civilization known for its grandeur, the simplest meals were often the most treasured. Dish 2. Flatbreads of the Nile. When you think of Egyptian food, a simple golden flatbread likely comes to mind. This humble creation was more than just a food item. It was a staple of every meal, often served with stews, cheeses, dips, or vegetables. Whether eaten by peasants or priests, flatbreads were an essential part of the diet for ancient Egyptians, providing sustenance and comfort for families and workers alike. Easy to make at home or on the go, flatbread fueled laborers in the fields and satisfied the hunger of traders, farmers, and priests. Flatbreads were made daily in Egyptian homes, often as a communal activity. Women would gather around, kneading dough made from emmer wheat, one of Egypt's most prized crops. Emmer wheat thrived in the hot, dry climate and fertile soil along the Nile, contributing a nutty, earthy flavor to the bread. The dough was simple, just emmer flour, water, and a pinch of salt. Sometimes, olive oil was added for richness, and in wealthier homes, herbs like coriander or fenugreek were mixed in for an aromatic touch. Once mixed, the dough would be left to rise slightly, relying on natural yeast in the air. The art of baking flatbread came next. Egyptians used stone or clay ovens heated by fire. The dough discs were slapped onto hot stones or oven walls, where they puffed up slightly, taking on a smoky aroma. The bread became crisp on the outside, soft and chewy on the inside, perfect for tearing into chunks and dipping into stews or scooping vegetables and cheese. For ancient Egyptians, flatbread symbolized connection to the land. Made from local, abundant ingredients, it was central to family meals and communal gatherings. Even today, sharing fresh flatbread, hot from the oven, remains a timeless, comforting tradition, reminding us of Egypt's rich culinary history and the joys of everyday life. Dish 3. Onion and lentil stew. There's something comforting about a bowl of stew, especially when it's made with simple, hearty ingredients that nourish both body and soul. In ancient Egypt, one of the most beloved dishes was onion and lentil stew. This humble stew provided warmth and sustenance after long days working under the hot Nile sun, offering nourishment and flavor that was accessible to everyone, from laborers to farmers. Lentils were a vital part of the Egyptian diet, prized for their nutritional value and ability to thrive in the arid soil of the Nile Delta. Packed with protein and fiber, lentils were an excellent low-cost food source, particularly for the working class. Easy to store and transport, they were perfect for workers who spent long hours away from home. In ancient times, this stew would have been simmered gently in a clay pot, allowing the flavors to meld over a low fire. The preparation began with onions, another essential ingredient in Egyptian kitchens. Known for their sweetness when cooked slowly, onions would be chopped and sautéed in olive oil or animal fat, filling the air with a sweet, savory aroma. Once softened and golden, garlic was added along with herbs like coriander, creating a fragrant base for the stew. A pinch of salt balanced the sweetness of the onions, deepening the overall flavor. Lentils were then added to the pot, along with water to create a hearty broth. As the stew simmered, the lentils absorbed the flavors, becoming tender and soft. The result was a rich, comforting broth, perfect for any time of day, whether breakfast, lunch, or dinner. In ancient Egypt, this stew was often served with warm flatbread, which could be used to scoop or dip into the savory broth. Quick and filling, it was a perfect meal for workers during breaks. Even today, Onion and lentil stew remains a beloved comfort food, serving as a reminder of how the simplest meals can carry both warmth and history. Dish 4. Stewed fava beans with garlic oil. Fava beans were a cornerstone of the common people's diet in ancient Egypt. These hearty, protein-rich beans were inexpensive to grow, easy to store, and packed with nutrition, making them a staple for the working class. Fava beans could be prepared in various ways, but one of the simplest and most beloved dishes was stewed fava beans flavored with garlic oil. This dish was enjoyed by all, from laborers to priests. Fava beans thrived in the fertile soil of the Nile Delta, where they were grown in large quantities, making them a practical food source. They were versatile, used in stews, soups, and dips. To prepare stewed fava beans, the beans were soaked overnight to soften, speeding up cooking time. Once soaked, they were simmered in water until soft, absorbing the flavors of the cooking liquid. As the beans cooked, they developed a rich, creamy texture, perfect for mashing slightly into a thick stew. The key to elevating this dish was garlic oil. Garlic, a staple in Egyptian kitchens, was crushed and sautéed in olive oil or animal fat, depending on availability. This garlic-infused oil added a savory, aromatic richness to the beans, transforming a simple food into a flavorful indulgence. To enhance the flavor further, fresh herbs like coriander or dill were sprinkled over the beans before serving, offering a burst of freshness that balanced the richness of the garlic oil. The dish was often served with warm flatbread, perfect for scooping up the beans, or with a simple salad for contrast. Even today, fava beans are a cherished ingredient in Egyptian and Middle Eastern cuisines, appearing in dishes like foul mesdames. Stewed fava beans with garlic oil is a perfect example of how the ancient Egyptians turned basic ingredients into a satisfying, flavorful meal, showing their ability to create something truly special with love and patience. Dish 5. Soft goat cheese and honey wraps. Goat cheese has long been a cherished part of Egyptian cuisine, offering a creamy, tangy flavor that is both rich and versatile. For thousands of years, this simple cheese was used in a variety of dishes, but one of the most popular ways to enjoy it was in a soft goat cheese and honey wrap. This dish, balancing the sharpness of the cheese with the sweetness of honey, would have been a favorite among shepherds, farmers, and laborers, offering protein and energy in one satisfying meal. Goats, which grazed on the fertile banks of the Nile, provided a reliable source of milk for Egyptian families. This milk, rich and flavorful, was transformed into cheese, a vital protein source for people working in the fields. The process of making goat cheese in ancient Egypt was simple. Milk would be curdled with rennet and drained through cloth to create a smooth, spreadable cheese. This soft cheese could be eaten on its own or used in various dishes. Its creamy texture and slightly tangy flavor made it a perfect complement to the sweetness of honey. Freshly baked flatbread was often the ideal vessel for goat cheese. The warm bread would be spread with a generous layer of cheese, turning it into a simple yet indulgent meal. A drizzle of honey added a rich sweetness, creating a delightful contrast to the tangy cheese. If available, crushed nuts like almonds or walnuts could be sprinkled on top, providing a crunchy texture and added flavor. This dish was versatile and easy to prepare, making it perfect for a quick breakfast or lunch. Whether eaten during a break in the fields or as part of a larger meal after a long day, the combination of goat cheese and honey provided both nourishment and indulgence. Even today, the pairing of tangy cheese and sweet honey remains a beloved combination across many culinary traditions. The simplicity and richness of these wraps remind us of Egypt's ancient food culture, celebrating natural, locally sourced ingredients and the joy of a humble, flavorful meal. Dish 6. Sour milk soup with herbs. In the sweltering heat of ancient Egypt, a bowl of sour milk soup was the perfect way to cool off and refresh. Similar to modern yogurt-based soups, this dish was tangy, light, and invigorating, ideal for workers in the fields or by the riverbanks after a long, hot day of labor. It was a cooling, hydrating soup that rejuvenated the body during Egypt's scorching temperatures. Sour milk, or fermented milk, was a common ingredient in Egyptian kitchens. The practice of fermenting milk to create a creamy, slightly sour substance was widely used and still remains in many cultures today. The process involved allowing fresh milk to ferment naturally, producing a probiotic-rich liquid. This sour milk not only provided nourishment, but also served as the base for many Egyptian recipes, including this beloved soup. To make the soup, sour milk was diluted with water to create a smooth, creamy broth. Fresh herbs like mint and dill were added for a burst of vibrant flavor, balancing the tangy milk with a refreshing herbal note. Garlic, a staple in Egyptian cooking, was crushed and stirred in, infusing the soup with its rich, earthy aroma. In some variations, cumin or coriander added a subtle warmth and spice to the dish, enhancing the flavors. The soup was then chilled, essential in Egypt's hot climate. It was served cold, often with freshly baked flatbread, which could be torn into pieces and dipped into the creamy broth. The soup not only provided comfort, but also helped hydrate the body, making it perfect for the scorching summer months when workers needed to stay refreshed and energized. Today, variations of sour milk soup, such as Greek tzatziki or Indian raita, continue to thrive in global cuisines. The ancient Egyptians, however, were pioneers of this cooling, probiotic-packed dish, showing how food can connect us to culture, climate, and nourishment in timeless ways. Dish 7. Salt-dried Nile perch. Fish from the mighty Nile River was a staple in ancient Egyptian diets, providing a rich source of protein for families, laborers, and priests alike. One of the most popular fish species was the Nile perch, a large freshwater fish that thrived in the river's fertile waters. Known for its firm texture and mild, subtle flavor, Nile perch was highly prized, and its abundance in the river made it an essential part of daily meals. The ancient Egyptians developed an ingenious method for preserving fish, ensuring they had access to this valuable resource even during times when fresh fish was unavailable: salting and drying. The process of preparing salt-dried Nile perch was simple but effective. First, the fish would be cleaned and gutted to prepare it for preservation. Generous amounts of salt were then massaged into the fish's flesh, allowing the salt to draw out the moisture and act as both a preservative and a flavor enhancer. This salting process not only extended the shelf life of the fish, but also deepened its savory taste. The salted fish would then be left out in the sun to dry, a technique that harnessed the scorching heat of the Egyptian sun. The drying process could take several days, and the intense heat worked to concentrate the fish's natural flavors while transforming its texture into something firmer and more concentrated. Once dried, the fish would often be rehydrated by soaking it in water or a mild broth, which helped restore its texture and flavor. After soaking, the fish would be fried or grilled, crisping up on the outside while remaining tender and flavorful on the inside. This method of cooking preserved the fish's unique taste and gave it a satisfying contrast between the crunchy exterior and the tender interior. Salt-dried Nile perch was often served with simple side dishes, such as freshly baked flatbread, pickled vegetables, or a quick onion salad. Fresh herbs like dill or parsley could also be sprinkled over the fish to add a refreshing burst of flavor. This preservation technique was invaluable for both workers and traders who needed food that could withstand long journeys and extended periods without refrigeration. For those living along the Nile, salt-dried fish was a practical and flavorful way to enjoy the abundance of the river, even when fresh fish was out of reach. Today, the practice of salting and drying fish continues in many cultures, from Scandinavian gravlax to Mediterranean salt cod. The ancient Egyptians, however, were among the first to perfect this technique, ensuring that salt-dried Nile perch remains a timeless culinary tradition that continues to influence modern cooking. Dish 8. Pickled cucumbers and turnips. In ancient Egypt, preserving vegetables was a practical necessity, especially during times when the harvest was plentiful but could not be consumed immediately. Pickling was one of the simplest and most effective ways to keep vegetables edible for months, and cucumbers and turnips were particularly suited to this method. These pickled vegetables, often served as a side dish or snack, were tangy, crunchy, and incredibly refreshing. The process of pickling began with the careful selection of fresh cucumbers and turnips, which were peeled and sliced into thin rounds. In ancient times, salt was the primary ingredient used to preserve the vegetables, drawing out their moisture and creating an environment where natural fermentation could take place. These salted vegetables were then submerged in a brine made from water, vinegar, or sometimes date vinegar, garlic, and fresh herbs like dill or coriander. Once the vegetables had been packed into jars, they would be left to ferment in a cool, dark place for several days. The result was a jar of brightly colored, crispy pickled cucumbers and turnips that could be enjoyed as a tangy side dish or added to bread and cheese for a light, flavorful meal. Pickled vegetables were a staple for workers and travelers, who could take them on long journeys without worrying about spoilage. They also provided a welcome burst of flavor and texture to meals that might otherwise be a bit bland. In ancient Egypt, pickling wasn't just about preservation, it was also about enhancing the flavor of food, adding a sharp contrast to the richness of grains and meats. Today, pickled cucumbers and turnips remain a popular snack in Middle Eastern and Mediterranean cuisine. Whether enjoyed on their own or served as part of a meze platter, they continue to be a testament to the ancient Egyptians' ability to preserve the bounty of their land and turn humble ingredients into something truly delicious. Dish 9. Emmer wheat dumplings in broth. Emmer wheat, one of the earliest cultivated grains in ancient Egypt, played a significant role in the daily diet of the Egyptians. It was most commonly used to make bread, but it also appeared in soups, stews, and various other dishes thanks to its nutty flavor and hearty texture. Among the simpler yet highly satisfying dishes made with emmer wheat was emmer wheat dumplings in broth, a comforting meal cherished by many, particularly the working class, who needed hearty food to sustain them after a long day's labor. To prepare this dish, emmer wheat was ground into a coarse flour, which was then mixed with water and a pinch of salt to form a dough. This dough was divided into small portions and rolled into dumplings. The dumplings were carefully dropped into a pot of simmering broth, either made from vegetables or meat. As the dumplings cooked in the hot liquid, they absorbed the flavors of the broth, becoming soft and tender, while adding a wholesome graininess to each bite. The broth itself would be flavored with typical Egyptian ingredients like onions, garlic, and sometimes coriander or cumin. These herbs were staples in Egyptian kitchens and would infuse the broth with a warm, fragrant flavor. The result was a rich, savory soup that combined the comforting softness of the dumplings with the depth of the broth, creating a meal that was both nourishing and satisfying. The dumplings acted like tiny, soft pillows of grain, soaking up all the delicious flavors around them. This dish was often eaten during breaks from the strenuous labor in the fields or along the riverbanks, providing workers with much-needed energy and hydration. It was perfect for both the cool nights by the Nile and the hot, dry days in the fields, making it a beloved comfort food. Today, variations of emmer wheat dumplings and broth can be found in many cultures. Yet the ancient Egyptian version remains a beautiful example of how simple ingredients can be transformed into a meal that is both flavorful and nourishing. Dish 10. Olive and fig tapenade. Olive and fig tapenade is a dish that has deep roots in Mediterranean cuisine, and the ancient Egyptians were likely among the first to create early versions of this savory sweet paste. Both olives and figs were abundant in Egypt, making them essential ingredients in many dishes. The briny, slightly bitter flavor of the olives paired wonderfully with the natural sweetness of dried figs, creating a delightful balance of flavors that made the tapenade a popular choice for spreading on fresh flatbread or dipping vegetables. To prepare the tapenade, the first step was to pit the olives and mash them, releasing their rich, salty flavor. Olives were an important staple in Egyptian kitchens, and their oil was used for cooking, as well as for medicinal and cosmetic purposes. The figs, often dried for preservation, were softened by soaking in water or a little wine, as the Egyptians did to prepare dried fruits. Once softened, the figs were mashed and combined with the olives, creating a luscious base that was both sweet and savory. Garlic, another key ingredient in Egyptian cuisine, was crushed and added to the mixture, infusing the paste with its earthy depth. Fresh herbs like thyme or coriander were often included for an aromatic touch, providing a fragrant balance to the richness of the olives and figs. The final step was adding a generous drizzle of olive oil, which helped bind the ingredients together into a smooth paste, while also enhancing the overall flavor and richness of the dish. This tapenade was often served as a side dish or appetizer, making it a versatile addition to meals. It could be spread on warm, freshly baked bread, added to salads to provide an extra burst of flavor, or served alongside fresh vegetables for dipping. Its ease of preparation and ability to store well made it an ideal dish for workers, travelers, and families in need of a quick, satisfying, and flavorful meal. Today, variations of olive and fig tapenade are enjoyed across the Mediterranean, from Spain to the Middle East. However, the ancient Egyptians were likely the pioneers of this unique combination, And this dish remains a testament to the timeless appeal of simple, seasonal ingredients coming together to create something truly delightful. Dish 11. Garlic and leek mash. In ancient Egypt, meals were crafted to sustain the body during long hours of hard work under the intense sun. One such comforting and nourishing dish was garlic and leek mash, made from basic yet hearty ingredients that provided both flavor and sustenance. Garlic, widely cherished for its robust flavor and medicinal properties, was a staple in Egyptian kitchens. Leeks, a mild, sweet relative of onions, were equally appreciated for their light, aromatic taste. Together, these two ingredients formed a dish that was both filling and satisfying, often favored by laborers and farmers who needed energy for their physically demanding work. To prepare this dish, fresh leeks were first cleaned and chopped, then boiled in water or broth until soft and tender. The garlic cloves were crushed to release their aromatic oils and added to the pot with the leeks. This mixture was simmered gently, allowing the flavors to meld together and the vegetables to absorb the savory liquid. As the leeks and garlic softened, the broth enriched their flavor, creating a comforting base for the mash. Once fully cooked, the leeks and garlic were mashed into a smooth paste. For extra richness, a splash of olive oil or animal fat could be added, giving the mash a velvety consistency and enhancing its savory profile. Garlic and leek mash was typically served alongside freshly baked flatbread, which could be torn into pieces and used to scoop up the creamy, flavorful mash. The simplicity of the dish made it easy to prepare and quick to serve, making it a favorite for those needing a fast, filling meal. Sometimes, it was paired with a refreshing salad of cucumbers and tomatoes, offering a contrast to the richness of the mash and providing a burst of freshness. Despite its humble ingredients, garlic and leek mash reflects the resourcefulness of the ancient Egyptians. By combining just a few accessible ingredients, they created a dish that was both deeply comforting and nourishing, reminding us that the most satisfying meals often come from the simplest, most readily available foods. Dish 12. Wild rice with dates and nuts. While rice was not native to ancient Egypt, grains like barley, wheat, and wild rice were commonly used in Egyptian cooking. Wild rice, which grew abundantly in the marshes of the Nile, was highly prized for its chewy texture and nutty flavor. This unique grain was a valuable part of the Egyptian diet, often used in special dishes during festivals or significant occasions. When paired with the sweetness of dates and the crunch of nuts, wild rice transformed into a delightful and filling dish that was both nourishing and flavorful. To prepare wild rice with dates and nuts, the rice was first rinsed to remove any impurities, then cooked in water or broth until it was tender yet still firm. This ensured that the rice maintained its slightly chewy texture, providing a hearty base for the dish. Once the rice was cooked, finely chopped dates were mixed in. Dates, abundant in Egypt and revered for their natural sweetness, were added to balance the earthiness of the rice, creating a beautiful contrast in flavor. The sweetness of the dates blended harmoniously with the nutty rice, giving the dish a rich, comforting taste. The dish was then topped with crushed nuts, such as almonds or walnuts, if available. These nuts added a satisfying crunch and richness, complementing the soft rice and sweet dates. A drizzle of honey or date syrup could also be added to enhance the sweetness and provide an extra layer of richness, making the dish even more indulgent. Wild rice with dates and nuts was often served as a side dish or as part of a larger meal. It paired well with roasted meats, vegetables, or freshly baked flatbread, making it versatile enough for both everyday meals and festive gatherings. The combination of flavors in this dish reflected the Egyptians' ability to take simple, seasonal ingredients and transform them into something both satisfying and delicious. Today, wild rice with dates and nuts continues to be enjoyed in many cultures, showing the lasting appeal of this ancient Egyptian dish. It remains a celebration of the natural sweetness and textures found in the fertile lands of Egypt, connecting modern meals with the rich culinary heritage of the past. Dish 13. Cooked watercress and chickpeas. Watercress, a vibrant green leafy vegetable, flourished in Egypt's fertile marshlands and was a common ingredient in both salads and cooked dishes. Known for its peppery flavor and high nutritional value, it provided a refreshing contrast to the hearty, starchy ingredients found in many Egyptian meals. Chickpeas, or garbanzo beans, were another essential component of the Egyptian diet. Packed with protein and fiber, Chickpeas provided energy, making them an ideal complement to the light, crisp watercress. To prepare this dish, fresh watercress was thoroughly cleaned to remove any dirt or grit and then boiled just until wilted. The key was to retain the vegetable's fresh, vibrant flavor. Chickpeas, whether dried and soaked overnight or fresh, were then cooked until tender. Once both ingredients were ready, they were combined in a simple yet flavorful dish. A light dressing of olive oil, lemon juice, and crushed garlic was added, bringing balance and depth to the dish. The acidity of the lemon contrasted beautifully with the earthiness of the chickpeas, while the garlic infused the mixture with a rich, aromatic depth. To further enhance the dish, a handful of fresh herbs like dill or coriander would be sprinkled over the top. These herbs, staples in Egyptian kitchens, added not only an aromatic intensity, but also a burst of freshness, elevating the dish with their bright herbal flavors. The combination of chickpeas and watercress made for a hearty, nutritious meal that was both satisfying and light, especially ideal during the warmer months when fresh greens and herbs were abundant. Cooked watercress and chickpeas was often enjoyed as a light meal or side dish, particularly for those seeking a quick and easy source of vitamins, minerals, and protein. It could be paired with flatbread or fermented milk, providing both sustenance and hydration. Even today, watercress and chickpeas remain staples in Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisines, highlighting the enduring simplicity and versatility of this ancient Egyptian dish. Its timeless appeal speaks to how the Egyptians used locally available ingredients to create nourishing, flavorful meals. Dish 14. Fenugreek and onion tea soup. Fenugreek, with its slightly bitter, earthy flavor, was a common herb in ancient Egypt, valued not only for its culinary uses but also for its medicinal properties. It was used to flavor a variety of dishes, and one of the simplest and most comforting ways to enjoy it was in a tea-like soup. When combined with onions, this soup became a flavorful and aromatic dish that provided nourishment and warmth, especially during leaner times when other ingredients were harder to come by. To make fenugreek and onion tea soup, the first step was to lightly toast fenugreek seeds. This process helped to release their natural bitterness and intensified their earthy aroma. Once toasted, the seeds were boiled in water to create a strong, aromatic broth. The water, infused with the essence of fenugreek, became rich and flavorful, providing a perfect base for the soup. Thinly sliced onions were added to the boiling liquid, where they softened and released their natural sweetness, balancing the bitterness of the fenugreek. A pinch of salt was added to season the soup, and sometimes a dash of olive oil or animal fat was included to enrich the broth and enhance its depth of flavor. Fresh herbs like coriander or thyme, if available, were sometimes stirred into the soup, adding an extra layer of brightness and complexity to the dish. This soup was typically served hot and was often accompanied by a piece of flatbread, which could be torn and used to scoop up the flavorful broth. The combination of the savory broth and the soft, chewy bread made the soup both comforting and filling, perfect for a quick, satisfying meal, especially for those on the go or after a long day of work. While fenugreek and onion tea soup may not be as common today, the use of fenugreek continues to thrive in many cuisines, from Indian to Mediterranean. This soup serves as a testament to the resourcefulness of the ancient Egyptians, who expertly used the herbs and plants that grew abundantly in their land to create simple, nourishing dishes full of flavor. Dish 15. Honey cakes with fig jam. In ancient Egypt, honey was a precious and highly valued ingredient, revered not only as a natural sweetener, but also as a sacred offering to the gods. It played a significant role in many Egyptian dishes, particularly desserts. Honey cakes, made with barley flour, were a rich and indulgent treat enjoyed during special occasions, celebrations, and as offerings in temples. When paired with fig jam, these cakes became a divine combination that was both satisfying and full of natural sweetness. To make honey cakes, barley flour was mixed with water, a bit of olive oil, and honey. The dough was kneaded together and shaped into small, round cakes. These cakes were then baked over hot stones or in a clay oven, where they developed a golden, slightly crispy exterior, while the inside remained soft and chewy. Once baked, the cakes were drizzled with more honey, enhancing their sweetness and creating a luscious, sticky texture that made them even more irresistible. Figs, a staple in ancient Egyptian diets, were often dried and stored for long periods, making them an ideal ingredient for creating jams or preserves. In some versions of the dish, figs were mashed into a jam-like consistency and spread generously over the honey cakes. The natural sweetness and richness of the figs perfectly complemented the honey, adding depth and a slight tang. For an added layer of texture and flavor, crushed nuts such as almonds or walnuts were sometimes sprinkled on top, providing a delightful crunch to balance the softness of the cakes. Honey cakes with fig jam were often eaten as a dessert or snack, especially during festivals, family gatherings, or after large meals. They celebrated the bounty of Egypt's crops, highlighting the natural sweetness of the land. Even today, the combination of honey and figs remains beloved in many global cuisines, and these ancient Egyptian cakes serve as a sweet reminder of Egypt's rich culinary heritage. Dish 16. Grilled goat offal with herbs. In ancient Egypt, nothing went to waste, especially when it came to goats, which were an essential part of Egyptian life. While goat meat was enjoyed for its rich flavor, the offal, organs such as liver, kidneys, and heart, was just as highly prized. These parts were often considered delicacies, cooked simply but expertly to highlight their deep, savory flavor. Grilled goat offal with herbs was a dish that reflected both the resourcefulness and the respect Egyptians had for the animals they raised. The preparation of goat offal began with cleaning and preparing the organs, a task that required skill and precision. Once the liver, kidneys, and heart were thoroughly cleaned, they were marinated with olive oil, crushed garlic, lemon juice, and a selection of fresh herbs like thyme, coriander, and dill. The acidity of the lemon helped tenderize the meat, while the garlic and herbs infused it with their robust flavors. Once marinated, the offal was threaded onto skewers and grilled over hot coals, often outdoors or near a cooking fire. The high heat seared the meat, caramelizing the exterior while keeping the inside tender and juicy. As the organs grilled, their rich, savory aroma filled the air, enticing anyone nearby. The final dish was served hot, often with a side of flatbread or a simple salad of fresh greens, offering a satisfying balance to the intensity of the meat. Grilled goat offal was commonly served during feasts or special occasions, where families, workers, and villagers gathered around the fire to share a meal. It was a dish that highlighted both the bounty of Egypt's pastoral life and the Egyptians' ingenuity in making the most out of every part of the animal. Today, goat offal remains a beloved dish in many Middle Eastern and North African cuisines, continuing the tradition of transforming humble ingredients into flavorful, hearty meals. Dish 17. Roasted sweet papyrus tubers. Papyrus, famously known for its use in writing scrolls and crafting boats, also provided a surprising source of food in ancient Egypt. Beyond its historical significance, the papyrus plant, particularly its tubers, was an important food source for many Egyptians. These starchy, slightly sweet tubers offered a flavorful alternative to other root vegetables like potatoes and yams, making them an essential part of the diet for workers and villagers who relied on the land's offerings along the fertile banks of the Nile. To prepare roasted papyrus tubers, the first step was to carefully dig up the roots, which grew deep within the rich, muddy banks of the Nile. Once harvested, the tubers were peeled, revealing their firm, white flesh inside. The tubers were then cut into bite-sized chunks, ready to be seasoned. A drizzle of olive oil was added to coat the pieces, followed by a sprinkle of salt and a pinch of herbs like thyme or coriander. These herbs, often found in Egyptian gardens, added a fragrant, aromatic quality to the dish that complemented the sweetness of the tubers. The seasoned tuber pieces were then placed on hot stones or in clay ovens, where they roasted slowly over an open flame. The heat from the fire transformed the tubers, developing a crispy exterior while preserving the soft, starchy interior. The slow roasting process allowed the tubers to caramelize slightly, intensifying their natural sweetness. The result was a hearty, comforting side dish with a texture that was similar to a cross between a potato and a yam, making it both filling and satisfying. Roasted papyrus tubers were often enjoyed on their own or paired with stews, soups, or flatbread. The tubers provided a valuable source of carbohydrates, perfect for fueling the laborers and villagers working along the Nile. The simplicity of this dish, along with its earthy, sweet flavor, made it a beloved food, particularly during the cooler evenings by the riverbanks. Today, while papyrus tubers may be difficult to find, the practice of roasting root vegetables remains popular, whether it's sweet potatoes, yams, or other starchy tubers. This dish serves as a reminder of the resourcefulness and simplicity that defined Egyptian cuisine. Dish 18. Mashed lotus root. The lotus flower, a symbol of purity and beauty in ancient Egypt, also offered practical benefits beyond its stunning blossoms. The roots of the lotus plant, harvested from the fertile wetlands surrounding the Nile, were highly prized for their unique texture and mild, slightly sweet flavor. Lotus root was a versatile ingredient, often used in a variety of dishes, and when mashed, it became a comforting and nourishing meal that highlighted the simplicity and resourcefulness of Egyptian cooking. To prepare mashed lotus root, the first step was to carefully peel the roots, revealing the firm, pale flesh inside. The roots were then sliced into chunks, much like how potatoes are prepared for mashing. These chunks were boiled in water until they became soft and tender, a process that took only a short time. Once the lotus root was tender, it was mashed into a smooth, creamy consistency. The natural sweetness of the root was brought out, creating a delicate base for the dish. To enhance the flavor, a generous amount of olive oil or animal fat was added, enriching the texture and making the mash extra creamy. A pinch of salt and a dash of crushed garlic were mixed in, enhancing the lotus root's natural sweetness with savory notes. The garlic, an essential ingredient in Egyptian kitchens, added a fragrant depth to the mash, balancing the mild flavor of the lotus root. Mashed lotus root was often served as a side dish, complementing vegetable stews or meat dishes. Its soft, creamy texture and light flavor made it an ideal accompaniment to more robust, savory components of the meal. In ancient Egypt, where fresh ingredients were often limited to those that could be grown locally, lotus root provided an exciting and valuable addition to the diet, offering both sustenance and variety. Though lotus root is less commonly used today, it remains a popular ingredient in many Asian cuisines, where its crunchy texture and subtle flavor are still appreciated. Mashed lotus root, although rare in modern cooking, serves as a reminder of how the ancient Egyptians made the most of the plants and resources available to them, creating nourishing, flavorful meals that have stood the test of time. Dish 19. Herb and onion pie. While ancient Egyptian cuisine is often viewed as simple and hearty, it also included dishes that were flavorful and comforting. One such dish was the herb and onion pie, a savory delight that took full advantage of the rich and aromatic herbs that thrived in Egypt's temperate climate. Onions, garlic, and a variety of fresh herbs were mixed into a dough and baked into a fragrant pie that was enjoyed by Egyptians during special occasions or as part of a larger meal. The herb and onion pie showcased the Egyptians' ability to transform simple ingredients into something delicious and memorable. To prepare this dish, a simple dough was made using barley or emmer wheat flour, water, and a pinch of salt. This dough was rolled out to create a base for the savory filling. The filling itself consisted of finely chopped onions and garlic, both of which were staples in Egyptian kitchens, along with a blend of fresh herbs like dill, coriander, and thyme. These herbs, known for their aromatic qualities, enhanced the savory onions and garlic, infusing the filling with fragrance and depth of flavor. Olive oil was added to the mixture to enrich the filling, and sometimes a squeeze of lemon juice was included to provide a touch of acidity, which balanced the richness of the oil and onions. Once the filling was prepared, it was placed on the rolled-out dough and the pie was folded or wrapped, sealing in all the flavorful ingredients. The pie was then baked, either over hot stones or in a clay oven, until golden brown and crispy. The baking process transformed the dough into a flaky, satisfying crust that contrasted beautifully with the soft, aromatic filling inside. The result was a savory pie with a crispy crust and a flavorful filling. The onions and herbs melded together harmoniously, while the dough provided a perfect base for the rich flavors. This herb and onion pie could be served on its own as a snack, or alongside a simple salad or a dollop of sour milk to add richness and balance. Herb and onion pie exemplified the simplicity and ingenuity of Egyptian cooking. By using readily available ingredients, the Egyptians created a dish that was not only flavorful, but also filling, showing how even the most basic elements could be transformed into something truly special. Dish 20. Crushed chickpea and dill paste. Chickpeas were a cornerstone of the ancient Egyptian diet, providing a rich source of protein, fiber, and essential nutrients. Valued for their versatility, chickpeas were used in a variety of dishes, including stews, soups, and salads, to nourish the body and provide energy. One of the most popular ways to enjoy chickpeas was by turning them into a creamy, hearty paste, a simple yet flavorful spread that could be paired with bread, vegetables, or enjoyed on its own. To prepare crushed chickpea and dill paste, dried chickpeas were first soaked overnight in water to soften them, making them easier to cook. Once soaked, the chickpeas were boiled until tender, allowing them to absorb the flavors of the cooking liquid. After cooking, the chickpeas were mashed or ground into a smooth paste, often using a mortar and pestle, a tool commonly used in ancient Egyptian kitchens. The chickpea paste was then enhanced with a drizzle of olive oil and a splash of fresh lemon juice, which added brightness and depth to the flavor. A pinch of salt was added to bring out the natural richness of the chickpeas, creating a harmonious base for the dish. The key ingredient that truly elevated this paste was fresh dill, which imparted a refreshing aromatic quality that balanced the earthiness of the chickpeas. Dill's distinctive fragrance and flavor made the paste both vibrant and fragrant, transforming the simple chickpeas into something much more complex and enjoyable. To further enhance both the texture and flavor of the paste, crushed nuts, such as almonds or walnuts, were sometimes sprinkled on top, adding a satisfying crunch. A little extra olive oil could also be drizzled over the top to enrich the spread's texture. This dish was often enjoyed with freshly baked flatbread, perfect for scooping up the creamy paste. It could also be served as a dip for fresh vegetables like cucumbers and carrots, making it an ideal light meal or snack. Packed with fiber, protein, and healthy fats, this simple yet nourishing dish exemplified the Egyptians' ability to create flavorful meals using only a few basic, wholesome ingredients. Today, variations of chickpea and dill paste can be found in many Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisines, such as hummus. However, the ancient Egyptian version remains a timeless reminder of how simple, natural ingredients can come together to create a truly satisfying and flavorful dish. Dish 21. Grape leaf parcels with barley. The ancient Egyptians were experts in using the bountiful resources of the Nile, and one of the most inventive ways they transformed simple ingredients was by wrapping them in grape leaves. Grape leaves, abundant in Egypt's fertile soil, were a versatile and essential part of the Egyptian diet. They served as a natural vessel for cooking delicate fillings, while adding a distinct earthy flavor and fragrance to the dish. One of the most common fillings for these grape leaf parcels was barley, a grain that played a crucial role in Egyptian cuisine. Barley was often used in a variety of forms, including bread, porridge, and in this case, as a stuffing for grape leaves. To prepare grape leaf parcels with barley, the first step was cooking the barley until it was tender but still firm, ensuring it held its texture when wrapped. Once the barley was cooked, it was typically mixed with a blend of finely chopped, fresh herbs such as dill, mint, and parsley. These herbs, which grew abundantly in Egypt, added a burst of fresh flavor and fragrance to the dish. A generous drizzle of olive oil was mixed in, providing richness, while a squeeze of lemon juice added a zesty, refreshing element to balance the earthiness of the barley. A pinch of salt was added to enhance the natural flavors, and sometimes a hint of garlic or finely chopped onions was included to deepen the overall taste. Once the barley mixture was prepared, fresh grape leaves were carefully washed and blanched in hot water to make them pliable for wrapping. A spoonful of the barley mixture was placed in the center of each leaf, and the leaf was then folded over the filling to form a neat, little parcel. The parcels were gently steamed or simmered in a pot with a bit of water and olive oil, allowing the grape leaves to soften and infuse the barley with their aromatic flavor. Grape leaf parcels with barley were a common snack or light meal enjoyed by Egyptians of all social classes. The combination of barley and fresh herbs made the dish both filling and nutritious, while the grape leaves provided a slightly tangy, aromatic layer that enhanced the overall flavor. These parcels were often served as part of a larger meal, accompanied by fresh bread and a dollop of sour milk, making them a perfect balance of nourishment and flavor. Today, grape leaf parcels remain a beloved dish across many Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisines, often known as dolmas or vine leaves. The ancient Egyptian version, with its emphasis on barley and fresh herbs, offers a beautiful example of how simple, locally sourced ingredients can come together to create a meal that is both delightful and satisfying. This dish is a timeless reminder of the resourcefulness of the Egyptians and their ability to turn humble ingredients into something extraordinary. Dish 22. Poached pears and date syrup. Ancient Egyptian cuisine wasn't just about hearty grains and legumes. Sweets also had an important role, especially when they were made from the rich, natural sweetness of dates. Dates were considered sacred in ancient Egypt and were often used in desserts or as offerings to the gods. One of the most decadent yet simple desserts was poached pears in date syrup. This dish combined the light, refreshing flavor of pears with the deep, rich sweetness of dates, creating a luxurious treat that was both satisfying and frugal. To make this dish, the first step was preparing the pears. The pears were carefully peeled and cored, then gently simmered in water until they softened but still retained their shape. The slow cooking process allowed the pears to absorb the liquid, making them tender and flavorful without losing their structure. While the pears were simmering, a date syrup was made by simmering dates in a bit of water, allowing the natural sugars to dissolve into a thick, golden syrup. The dates, which were abundant in Egypt, were not just a sweetener, but also provided a depth of flavor that enhanced the whole dish. Once the pears were perfectly poached, the date syrup was poured over them, soaking into the tender fruit and infusing it with the rich sweetness of the dates. This simple but indulgent preparation transformed basic ingredients into a dessert that felt both luxurious and deeply connected to the land. The poached pears were often served chilled, making them a refreshing treat, particularly for warmer months. To add texture and contrast, a sprinkle of crushed nuts like almonds or pistachios might be placed on top, offering a satisfying crunch and a nutty flavor that complemented the smoothness of the pears and syrup. This dessert, though simple, was elegant, relying on the natural sweetness of the pears and dates rather than refined sugars or complex ingredients. In ancient Egypt, poached pears and date syrup were likely reserved for special occasions, particularly during festivals or when entertaining guests. Today, this dessert remains a delightful, health-conscious treat, using natural sweeteners and seasonal fruits. It exemplifies how the Egyptians elevated simple ingredients to create something indulgent, yet in harmony with the natural world, turning a modest combination into a timeless and treasured dessert. Dish 23. Garlic and coriander paste on toasted bread. Ancient Egyptian cuisine often centered around a small group of simple yet powerful ingredients, and when combined, they created bold, flavorful dishes. Garlic, an essential component in Egyptian kitchens, was used extensively to season meats, vegetables, and grains. Coriander, with its fragrant, citrusy aroma, was another key herb in Egyptian cooking, adding brightness and depth to many dishes. One of the simplest yet most delightful ways the Egyptians enjoyed these two ingredients was by making a garlic and coriander paste, which was often spread on toasted bread. This paste served as a quick, flavorful snack or an accompaniment to a larger meal, offering both nourishment and taste. To prepare the garlic and coriander paste, fresh garlic cloves were finely crushed or mashed using a mortar and pestle, releasing their powerful aroma. The garlic's pungent and savory character was the base of the paste, but it was the addition of fresh coriander leaves that truly elevated the flavor. The herbs, with their refreshing citrusy notes, balanced the garlic's intensity, creating a complex and fragrant blend. A pinch of salt was added to enhance the overall taste, while olive oil brought richness and smoothness to the paste. A squeeze of lemon juice added a hint of acidity, brightening the paste and tying the flavors together. The mixture was then ground into a smooth, aromatic paste that was both pungent and refreshing. This paste was typically spread onto pieces of freshly toasted flatbread. The heat from the toasted bread helped release the essential oils of the garlic and coriander, infusing each bite with a delicious, savory, and slightly tangy flavor. For those fortunate enough to have access to olives or a drizzle of honey, these could be added to the paste for an extra layer of richness, offering a more complex flavor profile. Garlic and coriander paste on toasted bread was a common snack, especially for workers and travelers who needed something quick, portable, and satisfying during long days in the fields or along the riverbanks. Today, this dish remains a testament to the Egyptians' ability to turn simple ingredients into something extraordinary, showcasing their resourcefulness and deep connection to the land. It is a reminder of how culinary traditions rooted in simplicity can create timeless, delicious meals. Dish 24. Cold emmer salad with pickled herbs. Ancient Egyptian cuisine was not only about the warmth of stews and baked bread. It also embraced the cooling and refreshing qualities of salads, especially during the hot summer months when the Nile swelled and the sun blazed overhead. One such dish was a cold emmer salad, which featured the hearty grain paired with fresh, tangy, pickled herbs, perfect for a light meal or side dish that could help cool off a warm day. Emmer wheat, one of the earliest cultivated grains in Egypt, was used in this dish as the base. To prepare it, the emmer was first boiled in water until tender but still firm. It had a nutty flavor and chewy texture, making it a satisfying and hearty addition to any salad. Once the emmer had cooked, it was drained and left to cool. The salad was then dressed with a variety of pickled herbs, such as dill, coriander, and sometimes even pickled onions. These herbs, preserved in vinegar and salt, brought a sharp, tangy contrast to the earthiness of the emmer. Fresh lemon juice, olive oil, and a dash of salt were added to tie everything together, creating a bright, zesty dressing that enhanced the flavor of the grain and the herbs. This cold emmer salad would often be served alongside grilled fish or a roasted meat, but it could also be eaten on its own as a simple, light meal. For those living near the Nile, where the heat of summer could be relentless, this dish provided both hydration and nourishment without weighing them down. The Egyptians understood the importance of balancing meals to provide both energy and relief from the harsh climate. Today, variations of cold grain salads with pickled elements remain popular in many parts of the world, especially Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisines. The ancient Egyptian version of this dish, with its focus on emmer and pickled herbs, speaks to the timeless appeal of using fresh, simple ingredients to create something truly satisfying. Dish 25. Fermented milk and honey drink. In the ancient world, fermented milk was a common ingredient in many cultures, and ancient Egypt was no exception. Egyptians were experts at fermenting various foods to preserve them, and milk was no different. Fermented milk, often called sour milk or kefir, was made by allowing milk to naturally ferment, producing a tangy, probiotic-rich drink that could be consumed on its own or used in cooking. When combined with honey, it became a refreshing, energizing drink perfect for hot days or as a post-workout refreshment for laborers. To make fermented milk and honey drink, fresh milk was allowed to ferment naturally, a process that could take anywhere from several hours to a full day, depending on the ambient temperature. The milk would turn thick and tangy, developing a creamy texture and a pleasant sourness. In ancient Egypt, milk from goats was often used, but cow's milk was also popular. Once the milk had fermented, it was sweetened with honey, which was abundant in Egypt and valued for its rich floral sweetness. The honey not only added a natural sweetness, but also enhanced the drink's richness. A little water might be added to thin the drink, making it more refreshing. The mixture was stirred well, and the resulting drink was often served chilled, offering a cooling respite from the scorching heat of the desert. Fermented milk and honey drink was consumed throughout Egypt, especially by laborers working in the fields or along the riverbanks. The natural probiotics in the fermented milk helped aid digestion, while the honey provided a quick source of energy. It was the perfect drink to keep people hydrated and energized during the long, hot Egyptian days. Today, fermented milk drinks such as kefir and lassi are enjoyed worldwide, and honey continues to be a beloved sweetener. The ancient Egyptian version of this drink, combining the tangy taste of fermented milk with the sweetness of honey, is an enduring example of how ancient food traditions have influenced the global culinary landscape. The dishes we've explored today, from the simplest flatbreads to the rich fermented milk drinks, offer a glimpse into the incredible resourcefulness and ingenuity of the ancient Egyptians. While their meals may not have been lavish by modern standards, they were deeply connected to the land and its bounties, making the most of what was available to them. These meals were about nourishment and sustainability, where every ingredient played an important role in sustaining both the body and the community. From the fertile banks of the Nile, where grains, herbs, and fruits grew in abundance, to the kitchens where simple yet flavorful meals were crafted, the ancient Egyptians developed a culinary tradition that emphasized balance, practicality, and respect for the environment. The foods they prepared were reflective of their deep connection to the land, showcasing how resourceful they were in utilizing local ingredients to create meals that could be enjoyed by all. Many of these ancient dishes continue to resonate in modern Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisines, showing that simple, flavorful food has a timeless appeal. As you prepare to recreate these dishes in your own kitchen, remember that they are more than just recipes. They represent a rich, ancient culture that valued the celebration of natural ingredients and the importance of communal eating. Whether you're stirring a pot of barley and date porridge for breakfast, or grilling goat offal with herbs for dinner, you're connecting with a tradition that has nourished Egyptians for thousands of years. Let these ancient meals inspire you to embrace simplicity in the kitchen, to experiment with humble ingredients, and to find joy in preparing food that brings us together, just as it did for the people of ancient Egypt thousands of years ago, along the banks of the Nile.